Okay, so this is going to be part 2 of the crime scene sketching. The first presentation that you watched was kind of like a brief overview. This one's going to be a little bit more detailed, kind of give you a little bit more information about what you're going to need to include in your final crime scene sketch. So with crime scene sketches, this kind of is just an introduction and sort of what it is that we need out of a crime scene sketch, but one of the big things that we're going to see the use for it is going to be to establish the precise location of objects and evidence. Also, to create a picture for those not present, so crime scene sketches are often used in a court of law for a jury. And it's a permanent record of the scene. So what that means is once it has been finished and approved by a court, that is the legal record of what a crime scene has looked like. So when you create a crime scene sketch, basically it's going to supplement all these other things, photographs, notes, casts, maybe of footprints, and other different types of ways to investigate a crime scene. It's going to sort of be one of the tools that an investigator uses. There's 2 types of sketches that you're going to see being used for crime scene sketching. The first of which is a rough sketch, which you are going to do as a group. The second of which is a finished sketch, and that would be the one that would be presented in a court of law, and you'll be doing that one individually. So the rough sketch is going to be pencil drawn, so that's the big thing. You can erase, you can do all kinds of stuff with a rough sketch. It's really just kind of your way of getting all the information. It's not always drawn to scale, but when you are drawing a rough sketch, let's say this is your room, you would want to make sure that you indicate that's not inches, oops, if it was like, let's say, a 24-foot long room, you would want to indicate that on the rough sketch. That doesn't necessarily mean that this wall has to be to scale. You would worry about that in your final sketch. So you really have to measure and indicate all those distances that are included in a sketch. You just don't necessarily need to make sure that your rough sketch is perfect in that case. You're going to sketch after you have photographs taken and before anything is moved. So you want to make sure that you have everything photographed and documented in that way. Once that has been done, then you can go ahead and start creating your sketch, making your measurements and all that stuff, but you want to make sure you do so before anything has been moved from the crime scene, because once it's been moved, that crime scene is now kind of tainted. And you also want to make sure that you're sketching as much as possible. So if you think something is some kind of a detail, include it. Any details that you think might be important, they are going to be important, so draw it. You want to be more detailed than less in all cases. The things that you need for sketching materials, definitely paper. I would recommend graph paper. I think that makes it a little bit easier to make straight lines and sort of have things a little more organized. Definitely a pencil. You don't want to use pen when you're doing a rough sketch. A measuring tape or a meter stick. We do not have measuring tape, so we are going to be using meter sticks in here, which makes it a little difficult. So if you'd like to bring in a measuring tape just to kind of make your group work a little bit faster, that's fine. You're also going to need a ruler. A clipboard, that's not really necessary, so sort of like not needed. Definitely an eraser and a compass, because on a rough sketch you need to show your coordinates. So you have a compass on your phone, but on your sketch you need to indicate which direction is north, south, east, and west. So let's say you have a crime scene, looks like this. We have some windows drawn in here and here. If north is in this direction, I need to make sure I indicate that on my crime scene sketch, okay? So you need to make sure that you do that as well. So when you're going to make a crime scene, there's a couple steps that you want to figure out, first of which is going to be to plan. So that's going to be the biggest thing. You don't want to just jump right into it. You want to make sure you have kind of a plan of attack of how you're going to get this huge, immense task done. The next is going to be observe. So that includes taking photographs. So you want to make sure that you take your photos before that you do any other drawing or any measuring or anything like that. Once you have all the photos recorded and you have them saved somewhere and you know that they're not going to get deleted, then you're good to start measuring distances. From there, you want to outline the area, kind of make it like a square, or if it's a room that's in any other shape, whatever else. Locate the objects and evidence within the outline. So let's say the body is object 1. Let's say the murder weapon is object 2. You would indicate that like that and maybe put a circle for both of those things, okay? Record any details that you see in a notebook. So as you're starting to kind of go through the scene, maybe you notice that, I don't know, the weapon is located close to the body, or it's put somewhere like in a trash can or whatever else. You want to make sure you note that. And then identify with a legend and a scale. So we said earlier that you don't need a scale for the rough sketch, and that's true, but that scale is going to be needed for your final sketch. So So the first thing, measuring and outlining, a steel tape does work best. So if you have like a measuring tape, that's going to be your best way to get it done quickly. But we don't necessarily have those here, so we're going to be using meter sticks. But again, a meter stick also doesn't stretch. So as long as you're just being careful and accurate, you should be able to get a perfect, what's it called? A perfect measurement, I guess. When you're using measurements, you can use either the imperial system using inches and feet or the metric system using centimeters and meters. You just have to indicate that in your legend or your scale. So when you're ready to make your rough sketch and you're ready to outline it, you want to make sure that you make north at the top of your paper. So what that means is, let's say you know that north is in this direction and your room is kind of oriented like this. That's how you would want to indicate it. So north is always going to be at the top. As far as your scaling goes, one of the things that you want to do is make sure you're using the proper type of scaling. So if you have a small room, you use a 1/2 inch for every foot. If you have a large room, you use a 1/4 inch for every foot. If you have a really large room, so very large, that would be 1/8 of an inch. So notice as we go, these scalings get smaller as the buildings get larger. So the larger your space, the smaller you want your scale, so you can make sure you can fit it all on one piece of paper. In terms of that, measure from fixed locations. So if you have, let's say, a sketch, you have a room here, and you know that you have cabinets here, maybe an outlet right here, things that aren't movable, and your body is here. You want to indicate how far that body is from fixed locations. So let's say it's 6 feet away. You would want to indicate that on your markings, so that way whoever's looking at the crime scene sketch knows exactly where the body was found, even though they weren't necessarily there. That goes for evidence as well. You also want to plot things on your crime scene sketch, so that way people can locate where they were and where the evidence were. So there's a couple different ways of doing that, and I kind of talked about this on the last slide. But these 4 methods can work in order to plot those objects and make sure people know where they are, so we're going to go into a little bit of detail there. The first of which is going to be rectangular coordinates. So you're going to use walls as your fixed points. This one might be the easiest for you. So let's say you have object A here. You would measure the distance of object A from that wall as well as that wall, and then mark those with arrows. So that's one of the ways you can do it using rectangular coordinates. One of the other ways that you can have it is using a baseline. So that's where you have one fixed point to another, let's say corner to corner. Your object is somewhere in between there, so you draw a line going totally through the outline. Then you indicate how far it is from the wall at that point, as well as from that baseline. So you can use that baseline sort of as one of your quote-unquote fixed points, but everything you're using is going to be taken at right angles. So all of your measurements from, like, let's say right here where that is, that's a right angle, and here is a right angle. So the baseline method is a little bit more challenging. I prefer the previous one, but it's really whatever your preference is. Triangulation is also another one. This is used most of the time in outdoor scenes, so we don't see so much this in terms of indoor residential or indoor business areas. But what this does is it picks 2 fixed objects from the fixed objects, and then you use straight-lined measurements to try to figure out and triangulate essentially where that object is. So let's say your object is found here. You would triangulate that from the garage here and here. And let's say this other object was found here, you would triangulate that from here to here. So it kind of just depends, again, what your preference is. This one is a little bit more challenging, but it does work very well for using outdoor scenes. And the last one is going to be a compass point method. This one is going to require you to use a protractor, and these shouldn't be little stars, they should actually be degrees, because what you do in that term is that you have your object here, you indicate how far it is from the center of your wall, and then using essentially degrees from a protractor, you're just indicating how far that is away from 90 degrees at that right angle. So if the object is located here, it's located 59 degrees west of this initial kind of baseline in the middle. So you use lines and angles essentially in the compass point method. The other one is going to be, so You can do when you're crime scene sketching. This isn't necessarily one of the ways of identifying where evidence is. This is just a way of drawing it. So some people will draw what's called an aerial view, which almost looks like a blueprint. The cross projection method is where you put all the floors and walls on one surface. So it's almost like you took like a box that the room is. So if you imagine this, and you just cut the walls, like cut here, 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 and here, and let that sort of all face. So like these would be locations where the wall would come together to sort of make a corner, and these would as well. So you can almost imagine it like a box that's been taken apart, and then you can see what's on each and every wall without it being sort of occluded by using an aerial view. So making a legend, it's going to be really important. That's how people are going to understand what is on your drawing. If you're missing a legend, you're missing one of the most crucial parts of a crime scene sketch. So this includes the case number. So, I mean, in our case, since we're sort of using mock crime scenes, you can make that up. But in the case of an actual criminal investigation, you would have a specific case number that's given to you. The type of crime, so if it's a homicide, if it's a burglary, all different kinds of stuff, you would just want to indicate what that is. The investigator, which is you, so that's going to be you. Little smile. The person's assisting, so that would be the people in your lab group who helped you with it. The direction of north, so you need to indicate where north is, and remember that when you're drawing your crime scene, you always want to make north at the top of your paper. So if that means that your picture is going to be kind of at an angle, that's okay. North should always be at the top, okay? Identifying information, so that would be a key. So let's say you have a murder victim here, you have a weapon here, you have fingerprints here, and you have footprints here. You would want to indicate all that in a legend showing what numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 really are. And then also a scale. So if you, in your scale, you have a small room and you make ½ an inch is equal to 1 foot, you would want to indicate that on your scale as well. Or on your legend, I'm sorry. And that's it. So if you have any questions about crime scene sketches, I would recommend re-watching these videos. You can always ask me, but you do want to make sure that you include the really crucial parts of this when you're doing your crime scene sketch.